7:02, and I'll call this meeting of the Katuitt Fire District Prudential Committee Policy Advisory Committee to order and have a roll call. Who's first? Adam.
Adam Zace, Katuitt Fire Commission, present.
Tom.
Tom Hoppenstead, Katuitt Water Commission, present.
Cindy.
Cynthia Gardner, resident.
Mike.
Mike Curtis, Policy Advisory Board.
And Seth Burdick, Prudential Committee member. So, I guess then the first order of business on the agenda was to determine the chairperson and the clerk for this iteration of the committee. Does anybody have a nomination for the chairperson?
I nominate Seth Burdick.
I'll second that.
Good job, Adam.
Well done. Any other nominations upcoming? Then we'll have a vote.
Is there a
Start.
second?
I seconded
Oh,
that.
you did? Sorry.
Are you agreeable to that, Seth?
I guess so.
What's our primary goal for the policy committee this year?
That's a good question. I reviewed for instance, I'm not totally in the dark about the policy advisory committee. I read the minutes and watched the latest videos. I received the documents that I suppose what was the recommendation of the last sitting of this committee, which was the capital improvement, just the general planning document. Cindy, you were on this committee last time, right?
No, I wasn't on it last year. I was on it the 3 years prior.
Tom or Adam, were you both on it last time?
Yep.
Yeah.
What was the conclusion that was drawn at the end of the?
Tom, I think you concur, right? The conclusion was Sylvia was the chair at that point. The document that you read, I believe the members of the policy advisory committee were, for the most part, supportive of that document as read.
Right. And was that a document that it was strictly an advisory document? Was it adopted? Was there any?
It would have had to gone to district meeting and it never made it there.
Right.
So
I think it went back to the Prudential Committee.
Just does informal recommendations, and then, it's going to be taken up by one of the committees of the district and brought to district meeting, and I don't think it ever was.
Right. So would that be, that would be sort of step one in terms of, so any of the actionable items that appeared on that document can't be implemented until it's voted on by the district at large.
That's my understanding.
So that's kind of that until May for that particular document.
Yeah, well, perhaps we ought to move that forward to the committees, to the commissions, right? To the fire commission and the water commission and the prudential.
And would it have to be approved by all three or just one to make it onto? It would only have to be one committee that would forward it for an open vote? Or would we want to have everybody, all three committees, approve it?
I think the latter.
Right.
Seth, all three committees should approve it, but the final approval before it can go to the district residents is the Prudential Committee, because the Prudential Committee is the overseer of this committee.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So do we want to talk about it at all? You guys obviously had worked on it and came to a conclusion and had it made. Do we take a vote or move to vote to have it go to each of the individual commissions?
Can I just make one comment first?
Sure.
So the year prior to last year, we worked on this a lot. We had about 4 or 5 meetings. And then last year they just had 1 meeting. So if we take a vote to do this, I would really like to make sure it makes it on each committee's agenda for their next meeting.
Right.
Because we're already in the end of January and things need to.
Right. We need to be well ahead of it.
Right.
How do you think it looks now, Cynthia? Did you have a chance to look at that document?
I did, and I'm in favor of it. I think, you know, each committee might want to tweak it a little bit, but it's a good start.
Okay.
So then we could submit it for review by each individual committee to then come back, and if everyone says okay, or well, if they have edits that they want to have in place, then it could come back here, and then we could fix it and then send it away again, and hopefully in a short order so that we don't have to be too close to the district meeting.
Well, so
And is there anything else that the committee is going to work on for this year? Because I have a couple of suggestions.
well, before you do that, before you make suggestions, so Tom, your next meeting is Wednesday. I don't.
Is that time probably? Is
Not this Wednesday, no.
It's not this Wednesday?
No, we're not meeting till the end of February.
Okay, so I got to take that off the calendar.
And when do the fire commissioners meet next? Is that coming up, or did that just happen?
The 9th.
9th. So then will you, Tom, and
Yeah.
you, Adam, take
Yeah,
it and
we
put it
I'll,
on the agenda?
sure.
Yeah,
Read
so we're
yours.
meeting on the 24th of February. We'll definitely put it on there.
And then we can do it at the Prudential Committee, which we just scheduled our next meeting for, was it the 22nd? And we can put it on our agenda and look at the word and wording of that particular thing. I mean, overall, it looks like you guys put a lot of work into it. And it has a lot of actionable things, you know, worthwhile things to get going on. But I suppose, do you want to then move to have it sent to each of the committees? Do we have to make a vote on any of that, or we'll just, as we said now, all it'll appear on
It's
the,
probably a good idea to put that on record.
how would I word it, you think?
Tom, were you going to say something?
I would make a motion.
Yeah, just make a motion to,
We send the, what do we call that thing?
It would,
CIP,
yeah, I'll
the
get to that.
capital improvement plan policy.
right?
Yeah.
So the capital improvement plan that was developed over the last few years, probably from when Cynthia was on the committee last, right through the end of last year. I make a motion that we send that to the commissions for their review, discussion, and suggested changes if there are any, so that it could be brought to the Prudential Committee.
Second. That was good. I
Well
just
done.
jumped right on that one.
Yeah.
So we'll have a vote then.
Make it,
All right, Tom,
yes, aye.
Adam
Adam.
says aye.
Cynthia Gardner, aye.
Mike
Aye.
Curtis, aye.
Yeah.
All right, so that passes. So we'll revisit that after all the committee meetings and hopefully move it along as soon as we can before the district meeting. So then I guess, that being said, does anyone have suggestions then for what should be discussed, or what our current, until that whole thing gets worked out, what anyone thinks our next court or our next action should be, or our next topic of discussion?
Well, Cindy said she has something. she
I know,
wanted
I
to
just
say.
didn't want, does anybody else have anything, or should I just?
Nope.
Okay, 2 years ago, another item that we discussed was decorum and having public comment on all the committees within the district on their agenda. So when there would be more transparency and people in the district could ask questions. That sort of never got brought to the Prudential Committee, and it never became a policy. And one thing I was noticing is, like, we have our district bylaws, but we really don't have a list of any of the policies of the district. So I didn't know if Fran has any of them from the previous listed anywhere, because I don't think there's a formal document for policies. And I think
Oh.
that's something we should work on, maybe.
Seth, if I may.
Sure.
Cindy, to my knowledge, every meeting that is held has public comment on its agenda. So I'm not sure to what end you're making this suggestion. Are you saying?
Well, there's been a couple this year, the Prudential that didn't have public comment. I know the school committee meetings haven't had public comment on their agenda where they are a committee of the district. So that's why I just want to make sure that all the committees, like on our meeting tonight, our agenda has public comment. It should be on everybody's agenda to allow a few minutes for somebody in the district to ask a question if they should have one. Because they are all public meetings.
And that makes me think of something slightly unrelated. I'm sorry, Cindy, but we didn't appoint a clerk. That was one thing we probably had to do, because I'm thinking now who's going to do the minutes. So I'll take just hold 1 second. Sorry, Cindy, but who would anybody have a recommendation or a nomination for the clerk's position for this committee?
So one of the benefits of I was selling the clerk position to some people here. The benefits of this is that we're recording these, so it's really really
right. It's not as bad as if you have
pretty easy
to
just go through it. So I don't feel that I can volunteer for that given other time commitments.
Kind of feeling the same way.
Don't mind doing it. I did it 2 years ago, so I can do it again.
All right, so I nominate Cynthia Gardner to be the clerk of the Policy Advisory Committee.
Adam Zace, aye.
I would second that.
Oh, second. Okay, there we go. Is that a motion?
So Adam, aye.
Aye.
Tom,
I just have one question.
Yes.
So how are the recordings going to be posted so that I can view them? Are we just going to put them to the district website?
I think they'll go on the YouTube channel now.
Yeah,
Is that
Lisa
where they all
sends
end
a
up?
link. Right, Lisa?
Okay,
Lisa.
perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So Tom,
Yes.
oh, aye. All right, Mike
Aye. Yeah.
and Cindy, you can,
Aye.
that's it. All right.
Willing. Thank you.
All right, she's willing and
Congrats.
able.
Thank you, Seth and Cynthia.
Like a lamb to slaughter.
So, Cindy, was that the end, before I interrupted you, was that the end of that part of your suggestion?
Well, yeah, I just think we should maybe come up with a document where we have like a policy book, just so when committees, start over or when other committees are formed, they have like sort of something to follow.
Right, does such a thing exist? Is anyone aware of that? Are we
You mean a document of
a particular document, just
kind of like
relative
bylaws?
to, well, yeah, I suppose parliamentary, I mean, we're bound by a certain parliamentary system as well, right? In terms of, we have to have,
I mean, a lot of committees don't even understand where those are or what they are. So it would be nice to have them on a document and the links of where to get them.
right. Does anybody have any feeling about that? If say,
No, I agree. It's
right. So then, sorry, Tom.
I'm sorry. This would be a district policy document, just an overview, district policy.
Yeah, an overview of the different policies that we start working on and keep track of. Because not all policies are going to be adopted into the bylaws. So
Right.
if they don't become a bylaw, where does the policy go? So that people know they exist.
Well, the Prudential Committee has to sort this out, I suspect, at some point. The bylaws committee reports to you guys, right, Seth?
Right.
And so does this committee. So you have to, I guess you're the final arbiter of.
So why don't, I'm sorry, Adam.
No, I was gonna say, so I suppose there are there, I don't know of any particular document that sort of collects policies written prior to this, other
If there
than
were.
bylaws. Yeah.
Right, if there were any. Well, then, so I suppose if Cindy, do you want to draw something up, just a rough something for the next time that we meet for discussion?
Yeah, I would be glad to
Committee
do
meets
that.
again, just as a something to start with,
Yeah.
and see if it takes off, if there's some thing that we can do,
And if anybody has
relative to
any
this.
suggestions, I'll send you my email and you can just send me any suggestions and I'll put together a document and send it out prior to the next meeting for you to review.
Sure. So when we reconvene, we can look at what your thoughts are and discuss it a little bit further.
I have something else.
Sure.
So Fran sent an email around a few days ago containing a number of the capital improvements plan, policy, proposal, the agenda, and then the governance study that was done a while back, like 20 years ago.
Right.
And I had the good, I reread it, and I was just wondering if anyone else had.
I did actually recently.
Yeah.
The now it's 20 almost, because it was in 2000. They had commissioned it in 1999 for the turn of the millennia.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it came out with that Prince record, right at around the same time.
2 years ago when we were working on this, people weren't even aware it was on our district website, and I pointed it out, and people back then started reading it. I remember Tom looked at it then, and I know I looked at it again then. And
I mean, does anyone have any particular? Did anyone take anything from their rereading or initial reading of this that that they might want to make mention tonight?
I mean, I did, insofar as it was an interesting document, and I think that it's something that we obviously, that there was an intention behind the creation of it at the time. And I spoke to a number of people about it and people who were involved in its original creation, and they intended to use it as a framework, for which to use to determine the direction of the fire district. And for whatever reason, it seemed to have gotten derailed pretty significantly and never really found its way into the network or the framework of the fire district. I think,
Right.
in light of that, it's something that we should definitely revisit.
Well, I
the word
don't.
Consolidation, and it's sort of a dirty word amongst the district.
Well, it lays out 5 potential avenues that a fire district might pursue. One is status quo, and then 4 others. So I was just wondering if, Fran, you've been in governance a long time here. What was the purpose of sending it around? First of all, I appreciate it because it forced me to reread it in preparation for tonight in case we were going to discuss it. Can you recollect as to what if anything came of that effort?
No, I think it hit a dusty shelf like many other things do.
Yeah.
And I think there are some people who think that, perhaps that we should do a new governance study and bring that study up to date, which I think might not be a bad idea. But that was the reason that I put it on the policy advisory agenda.
I found it fascinating reading in many ways, but I agree with you. It's hard. I think the data, of course, would all change. I don't know if the conclusions would change much, but yeah, it seems to me. Do you recall what the cost was?
I don't recall what that cost was. I believe a projected cost for repeating it is $25,000.
Yeah.
Well, I know that study was more than $25,000, so I can't imagine 20 years later why it would be less.
Well, so I see where you're going with this, I think, Adam, and I agree with you on the, I suppose what's going on with the fire district right now in terms of change as it pertains to whether we're talking about what may become of the Katuitt School, where the village is going in the next 5 years, all of it, it all ties together. Is the policy advisory committee the place to make a recommendation for
I don't know,
a new governance study? Because I personally, for my part, think that we, as an aspect of our policy, need to have a more concrete plan going forward into the next 5-10 years, just like in this plan that you all worked hard on at the last iteration.
Well, yeah, I think the Water Commission, the Fire Commissioner, we're certainly looking at things like 10-year strategic plans. There is definitely a feeling amongst the folks that all of us talk to that planning is a good thing. I don't know if there's an appetite for spending that money, despite the fact that I agree with Fran. I think it's a good idea, and I agree with you. It's a more than reasonable idea to consider this as perhaps an all-encompassing way of stitching together all those different strategic plans.
Can I ask a question? Fran, do you have somebody that you might recommend to do the study? I know you'd have to put it out to bid, but
Paul, the
Mike
chief,
again, would it?
no, Mike won't do it. He's
Okay.
retired. So there is somebody who would do it. The chief's got his name. I think, I personally think the importance of doing it is that because you get somebody who's more objective and can look at all the, look at the entire district in a more objective manner than can be done by people sitting on committees on the inside.
Agreed. So,
Seth, do you want to get that name, and then we can maybe next meeting look at some other people too, and maybe.
Absolutely. I'm curious, what have the water commissioners been thinking of late in terms of long range planning?
Well,
I'm sure it figures in quite a lot with
yeah, it
wastewater
does.
and all that.
I don't think we've been thinking about a governance study, but it is in the CIP from 2020 in accordance with recommendations of the 21st Century Governance Study, which is this one. It shall be the policy of the Fire District 2, and then there's a number of bullets that are listed there that we put together last year, including review the efficacy of the governmental structure every 5 years, yearly review of operational aspects, establish formalized lines of communications among the districts within the town, the 5 districts, survey and gather feedback on topics of importance.
So it kind of,
I don't know if we want to tackle the governance study prior to looking at the capital improvement plan policy document, I guess.
yeah, it's 165 pages after all.
Well, and it's 21 years old too. Like I said,
Yeah, although I think there's an awful lot of it that yeah, I think there's an awful lot of it that remains quite pertinent despite its age.
I think so. And so I guess what you're saying, Tom, is that putting the horse before the cart, we should have this CIP settled because an aspect of that is really what would amount to a governance study. I mean, a more determinate policy about how we're going to do business for the next periods of time, 5, 10, 15, 20.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when I saw the 2 documents together from Fran, and thank you for sending those out, Fran. That's what came to my mind. But that's I'm a water commissioner, and I'm thinking of water and water protection. I don't get into the nitty gritty of government all that much.
Weren't you going to say humble water commissioner?
Truly humble.
Why don't we make a plan to meet like the first week of March? Because that way you have already had a fire department meeting and a water department meeting, and we can see what your boards have to report back to us, and then we could go from there.
I think the Prudential Committee meets on the 22nd as well.
Yes.
Right, but the water meets after that, correct, Tom?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I think that would be a reasonable place to start, at least in order to have all the information that we need, because it all ties together so closely. I think that, it could also appear on the Prudential agenda, possibly as a separate item, a governance study, or the idea of a governance study, or the review of the possibility of a governance study, and who and what and how we would do it. And of course, it would have to wait until a district meeting at any rate, at the very earliest, to have funds made available for that sort of thing. That seems reasonable to me, though, in terms of, I think that what you guys produced last year is the first order of business, and having that policy in place, if approved in its current form or whatever form, would probably be the best way to go.
Okay, and we did vote on that. There was a motion, we voted on it, we all agreed. So we're all going to take that forward. I think just a shout out to Silvio in absentia for his role in that document. That I think he played a tremendous.
He did for sure.
part.
I wonder how Silvio is, on an aside. Does anyone ever speak with him?
I haven't spoken to him.
Well, I'm sure.
You know, you
great.
move past the Rotary, you just you forget about
It's
people.
over. Yeah, another land.
Right.
So are there any other, are there any topics that anyone has been thinking of particularly, or that feel is pressing as a policy matter for the district?
Well, I think we're all doing in our various commissions are doing and the newly formed school committee. There's an awful lot of thinking about the future that all these commissions are doing, and I'm buoyed by that. I think it's good. I think it's really good for all of us. Whether we lift anything eventually from either the current and old governance study or endeavor to do a new one, I do think it seems pretty exciting that this is a line of discussion among all of us. So
Absolutely, I agree. So then, do we want to plan for a future meeting of this committee?
I think there's a suggestion on the floor. It's not a motion, but a suggestion.
Question, yeah.
What date did you say, Cindy?
Well, the first week of March, March 1st is a Monday, so we could do
Right.
any day, the first week of March.
So
Um,
Mondays work for me. March 1st, Monday works for me just fine. Tom or Mike?
Yeah,
Anybody,
I'm fine
Adam?
with it. Yep.
Do you like
And
7
Cindy?
o'clock or do you want to do 6 o'clock? What,
I'd personally prefer 6. I don't know if any of you have a preference.
I
No
prefer
preference.
6 too, because there's not another meeting before it, so.
Right.
Yeah, 6 is preferable if there isn't another meeting.
So I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we meet on Monday, March 1st at 6 PM via Zoom link. And prior to that, I will get to you the agenda and the minutes for your approval.
I second it. Yep.
Adam Zace, aye.
Tom Hoppenstead, aye.
Mike Curtis, aye.
Cynthia Gardner, aye.
Seth Burdick, aye. All right, well, that sounds good.
The 6 o'clock thing, right?
Yeah.
6 o'clock, the 1st,
Mhm.
and I'll get all the paperwork and that for that. Hopefully we'll have some news on what the committees say on the
Yeah,
CIP.
so we'll put that on our agenda for the 25th or 24th, whenever we're meeting towards the end of February there on that Wednesday. And then if everybody else can try to give it some time at their commission meetings, perhaps we can move forward with that. I think that's a good step forward. And then I like Cynthia's idea and recommendation to have kind of an overview document on policies and if we need to recommend to all committees that there be public comment periods, then any subcommittee of the district, I think, should follow suit as well. And I think that's something perhaps I'll bring up to the Water Commission anyways.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to adjourn, or does anybody have any other business?
I move that we adjourn this iteration of the Prudential Committee's Policy Advisory Subcommittee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Seth.
Of course, I'll see you guys soon.
Cynthia?
Tomorrow
Yep.
for you for chicken pie.
Yep.
Cindy will get in Arizona.